Hey everyone, what's up? Are100 here. So today we are gonna cover two more scenarios from CloudGoat. So if you did not watch the previous video, CloudGoat is a very cool playground for us to learn about AWS misconfigurations, privilege escalation scenarios, different vulnerabilities on different services. I try to group the same or similar services as much as I can. In the first video this week, we covered two Lambda services, two scenarios for Lambda services, and today we're going to cover two scenarios for IAM. So if you're ready, let's get started. The first one is IAM Prevesc by rollback. If you go to the GitHub page by Rhino Security Labs, you can just find the easy scenario here, IAM Prevesc by rollback. It's a small and easy setup. The command to initiate the setup is given in here as well. CloudGoat create IAM Prevesc by rollback. We can just create it in the background while we are checking this page, the documentation for the specific scenario that we're working on. Let's go to that directory, Python tree, and we're gonna initiate it. It's gonna create a user called Rainer and 5 policy versions. And our scenario goal is acquiring full admin privileges. So we're starting with Rainer. IAM profile. We're going to review the versions for the Rainer's IAM policies, and then we're going to set the default policy version to a specific version to restore full admin policy version, which will give us the full admin access. So as always, the first thing we're doing is adding these credentials from the initial setup to our AWS credentials under the home directory. Let's remove the previous ones from the previous video that I created on YouTube. So let's name the profile name Rainer, which is the username, the user that's been given to us in here, Rainer. So let's write it down in the profile, and let's also give AWS access key ID and secret access key. You can just copy paste from here and paste it in here to create the profile. Once we add these information to AWS credentials, we can read it to verify that we edit properly. There's no typos or anything. Looks cool. We have this profile. The first thing we always do is we're checking for the username, and you can do it with AWS STS get caller identity command. You need to give the profile as well, which is Rainer. That's the way to do it. Cool, so we got the ARN and the username as well. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check for user policies. We're going to attach the username, the profile, and IAM list user policies. We don't have any inline policies, so we can just check for the manage policies with list attach user policies comment. The rest would be the same. We're just changing the comment for it to see the manage policies. And then we're going to find one policy here. We have the policy name and the policy ARN. What we can do is we can investigate or enumerate on this policy. The comment for it would be get policy. We also learned all about these in the previous videos, so you can just check it out as well. Otherwise, just check the AWS command line interface documentation. We're given the policy ARN in order to get the policy details. And that should be it. It's going to give us policy name, policy ARN, default version, and these kind of information. So what we're going to do is we're going to check for version ID v1 to check for the permissions on this policy version. We're going to give the policy ARN, policy version v1, and then the profile that we gave in the beginning. As you can see, these are the actions allowed, like IAM get list and then set default policy version. So that's the privilege that we are given to, which is a default policy. So what we can do is we can find other versions of this policy if there is any policy version with more privileges. So for that, we need to use the command get policy So we can use list policy versions to see how many versions are there, which versions are there, to see the available ones. And we are going to have 5 different versions. We can enumerate every single one of them one by one with the get policy version command. We're going to check for v2 because we already looked at the v1. The action is IAM get. It doesn't look like administrator privileges because in the goal it was mentioning that one of the versions have full administrator privileges. This is effect deny, so it's something that we don't want. This is something with S3 actions. That's also not what we're looking for. And the v5 is the one with administrator access. As you can see, action is all, effect is all, and allow and resources on all. Perfect. Since we have the permissions to set default policy version, we're just going to set it for v5, which is going to attach administrator access policy as the current policy version, and it's going to give us admin access. Super simple. As it's mentioned in the beginning, it's the easy scenario for us to work on. And we escalated our privileges in this way by setting up administrator access policy, which was a policy version v5, to our current user. And then we are given the profile as well, Rhino, and we escalated our privileges in this way. Super simple, super cool scenario. And that was the first one that we worked on. The second one is IAM ProEsc by attachment. That's not as easy as the first one, so we have more work to be done here. That's a medium and difficulty is moderate, so let's start it. I think it also gives like a nice vision to start with the easy one and then medium. There are also hard scenarios later that we're going to see. So we're starting with a very limited permission user. We're going to identify the pre-existing IAM instance profile, and then there's role that we're going to assume, I think. We're going to create EC2 instance, create key pair and like other information. And the goal is to delete an EC2 instance that's a critical server that we're going to do at the end. So we're just adding the credentials again from the setup to our AWS credentials file. I just like made this scene a bit fast. And then we will start enumerating the current user as always. One thing we can do is, in this video I used automated tools. One of them is Paku. It's a very popular tool. I already installed it, as you can see in here. So it's also very easy to use. You can just like type Paku, and then you can create a new session. I already created one before, so I'm just going to use the same one. You can set your keys for the profile that we already have. Just use the set keys option. Use your access key, secret key for the user. What was the username? Carry something. Carrigan. It's like cardigan. It's like reminding me Taylor Swift right now. Okay. Let's paste this here. There's no session token, it's optional anyway. So okay, we're gonna do enumeration using Carrigan. So we're gonna use the option IAM brute force permissions. So it's gonna give us a bunch of output, the allowed ones and also allowed one and denied ones. Another tool we can use is the following. It's enumerate IAM. I'm also showing the GitHub page quickly. It's a very cool one that shows like a more neat output compared to Paku, I think. You're just writing the access key and the secret key that will give you the information. And let's see what are the allowed actions. We can just enumerate IAM in this way. I'm not sure in the setup for these it's just like super straightforward. Show the GitHub page, so you can just go there and install it, set it up yourself, but just few comments, super simple. And as you can see, there are some actions that we can do. EC2 stuff are especially interesting because these are going to be useful when we are running an instance, creating subnets, describing subnets, instances, etc. Okay, so let's see what are the next actions that we need to do. We can describe instances to see the running EC2 instances. We're gonna attach the profile and also the region. And you can see it in here. You don't need to specify text. You can just also see it like a JSON format. And it shows like the instances, instance AMI, public IP, information like that. And you can see the scenario IAM ProVesc by attachment. So that's the one that we're gonna work on. It also mentions super critical security server EC2 instance. So that's our instance that we're gonna work on. The next thing is, it's also mentioned in the resource or the documentation, we need to check for instance profiles because we're gonna work on it in a second. It's also mentioned on here. We're gonna look or check for available instance profiles, and we're seeing it. And we're seeing it in here for the given profile. Don't forget to attach that. There's like this interesting one that has a role name attached to it, the one with the meek role. So we can list the roles, role permissions with this instance profile. We can also list roles for the current profile, Kerrigan. And we're gonna find two interesting roles. One of them is the one that's attached to this, attached to the instance profile, the meek one, and the other one is mighty role. As we've seen in here, role ARN or role name mentions like the EC2 mighty role, ProVesc by attachment, and the other one is the one is already attached to the instance profile, the meek role. In the services EC2, actions STS assume role, cool. And what we can do is we can add this role to the instance profile that we found quickly. Super simple. You can again check the IAM documentation for command line interface, but the comment is add role to instance profile. As I mentioned in the previous videos, it's like basically the English sentence that you can think of. I want to add the role to an instance profile, so it's like super simple. And the instance profile name is given already in here. If you scroll up a bit, here we go. And then we're also going to attach the role name that we want to add to the instance profile. It's the mighty one. Let's add it in here. And of course, don't forget to add the profile here, which is Kerrigan. And we will get an error message. It says cannot exceed quota for instance sessions per instance profile, which is 1. That means you already have a role that's attached to this instance profile. We've seen it in here already, the meek one. And you need to remove it, obviously, to attach a new one. We can do that. It's not a hard task to work on. It's basically AWS IAM remove role from instance profile instead of add role to instance profile. Super straightforward and easy. We're going to write the instance profile name and also the role name that's attached to it right now to remove the role. What's the name of it? Here we go, the role name. And don't forget to add the profile as well, Kerrigan, and that should remove the role from that instance profile. Perfect. Then we will run the add role again, the one that we got an error message before, and perfect. We don't get any error messages anymore. If we refresh this comment again, that should give us the role attached to it as mighty one. That's really good. So that was another item in the list that we need to work on. We've done that already. So we're ready to spin an EC2 instance with the full permissions now. So the first thing for that task is to create a key pair. It's also mentioned in here, which will which will create a PEM file at the end. We need to do that, and then we will check for, we will describe security groups and subnets, which will be used later when we are running an instance, because we need to get all this information by writing describe instances. So we can also check for the filtered version, just for the ones that are running, so that if there are any terminated EC2 instances, we don't have to deal with them. And you're seeing the name of it, the key value, security groups, the VPC, network information, the public IP, private IP, client token, the volume, AMI, image ID, instance ID, all of this information, or instance type, all of this information is given here when you write the describe instances comment. And we're going to create a key pair. I call it final, and then mention the region and profile as well. After we create the key pair, we need to give the proper permissions to it, because we're going to connect to the EC2 instance later with this PEM file. And then we're going to describe the subnets and the security groups that we're going to find the values to attach to our run instances comment in a second. Don't forget to mention region. I always forget it, like literally all the time. Generally the comments fail then, so don't forget that, guys. Okay, so let's describe the security groups, and we're gonna like check this out to find one that would be useful for us, because we need to have the security group ID later. You can just go through it, do one, and here also the description. It's basically allowing us to connect over SSH. The other ones are also for HTTP, HTTPS, so we don't need them, but we need to connect to the server through SSH. So we need to have the group ID for this one, and we will use this for security group IDS option in our run instances comment. That was one thing that we needed to look at. The other one is describe subnets, so that we can find a subnet that we can use in our instance. And then we're gonna start, we're gonna run instance. So one thing we can do is we need to give the image ID. We can just check this comment from the running instance to give the image ID from it. So let's copy paste the image ID. And then we need to have the instance type. As you know, t2.micro is a free instance type, so we can just give that one without actually paying for anything. Then IAM instance profile, we need to give the mighty roles ARN. Where was it? Instance profiles, we can see the role ARN is attached to it. I think I copied and pasted the wrong one, because I copied the ARN for the role, but I needed the instance profile. I'll correct it in a second. And then the key name, what did we call it? Like, I think it was final. We need to give the profile as well, the region, of course. And we need to give the subnet ID as well. If you remember from the previous comment, I showed one subnet that was looking exactly like what we need. There we go. Provisk by attachment, public subnet. So we can use that subnet ID here. Another option that we need to provide is security group IDs. If you remember, there was one that allows connection through SSH. Because if you don't do that, your public key that you defined will be useless, because we need to have the option to connect to the EC2 instance that we created via the PEM file that we create. So otherwise it's not going to work. So let's add the security group ID as well. Even highlighted that group ID SG, the one that starts with SG. So let's attach this to... Where was my comment? God, there's so many tabs. And don't forget to add the region, as I always do. And And like I said, I did a typo here. Instead of instance profile, I added the role ARN. So let me correct this very quickly. Since I create the video and then add the audio on it, sometimes like come on, how did I do this mistake? Why did I not edit this? This is wrong. But yeah, everybody does typos sometimes, or copy paste, especially like you're creating or solving so many different scenarios at the same time. The brain gets mushy at some point. So let's see. Let's delete the role ARN and let's actually add the profile ARN. Copied and pasted the wrong area. Where was it? Here we go. Instance profile name, and we need the ARN for it. Double checking to make sure that I'm not copying and pasting something wrong again. That should create it. That looks great. We can look with the describe instances with the filtered running ones after waiting a bit to make sure that each instance is initiated. And then we're gonna use our PEM file using public key authentication, and the default name is Ubuntu for the Ubuntu server. It's always the case. And then we will find the public IP address. What was it? This one, and let's connect to the Ubuntu instance, EC2 instance, sorry, just like that. These are the private IP addresses. We don't need that. We need the public one. Let's write it down, accept it, say yes, and we should connect just like that. Perfect. The next thing we want to do is we want to fetch the credentials using metadata API. First, it's going to give us the credentials name, and then from there we will add it to our URL, and we're going to fetch the credentials. Let's add it to our URL, the CG something, right, this one. Okay, so we have the access key, secret access key, and the token. That's great. Let's add it to our profile. And we also have the session token. Let's copy paste this one as well. That's great. So now we can describe instances using the new profile that we have. And then again, we can terminate the instances using that profile and the credentials that we found. We can just use describe instances, again, attach to the region, the new profile, and we will get the instance ID like that. With the terminate instances command, I run the terminate instances command and attach the correct instance ID, give the profile that we just got the credentials for and the region. So we successfully exploited 2 IAM privilege escalation scenarios by using different services as well. I hope that you enjoyed this video. There are cool stuff coming for EC2, ECS, S3 in the next videos. There are also more harder scenarios that I'm gonna create one video per scenario, because they are much longer than these little small or moderate severity ones. So I hope that you guys liked it. Drop a comment if you want another CTF scenario for me to work on. I already have my list that I started working on container security, different AWS security playgrounds, but just drop me a message and maybe I'll start working on another thing that you mentioned in here in the comments. Enough with the chit chat. See you in the next video. Cheers, guys.